All right. And then, Lindsay, when we get to the paleo stuff, I'll just hand it over to you. Okay. Well, welcome everyone for the last Symbiota support group meeting of the year of 2025. Here we are in December. I hope you had lovely Thanksgiving for those of you who are in the US. And we wanted to just celebrate, take a moment to say, hey, happy birthday to Symbiota Support Group. We started in December 2021. Can you believe it? It's been 4 years. Like, that's crazy.
I cannot believe
So I
it.
know, yeah, I can hardly believe it. So thanks for tuning in with us, guys. I feel like we have only scratched the surface of all the things that we can talk about in these community meetings, and there's still plenty more to discuss. And we're glad that you're still on board. This is real fun. All right, a couple of announcements before we get into the meat of today. One is that we have moved what was previously called the Symbiota discussions to the new community, what is called a community board now. So previously, you had Symbiota discussions, and it looks pretty much identical. It's just at a new URL, which Lindsay will put in the chat. So it's just that now, instead of this confusing Symbiota docs discussions thing, we're here at Symbiota slash community board slash discussions. So this, as a reminder, is where you can have forum type discussions among you and other users. If you have a GitHub account, GitHub is not scary. It's quite actually easy to use, but you can put ideas, you can make announcements, you can talk about what other people are doing in their portals. This is a particularly good place to discuss um, like what people are doing in their portals. That's not necessarily a question for the Symbiota support hub. Like it's more a like practice question rather than a like this is what this field says, this is how this button works. But if you do have messages that you want to pass on to the Symbiota Support Hub, you can also post there, but of course you can just continue to use the help desk, help@symbiota.org. But the other thing about this community board is that this is where we are logging wish list items. So when y'all come to us and you say, hey, it would be really nice if this did this, or if we had a feature that did such and such, and we don't necessarily have funding to pursue that development, then it goes into our wish list so that we make sure that your thoughts get logged and that we can approach them if other funding comes up and it's possible to work on those developments, then we have a place where they can go. One thing I would recommend is anyone can come on to this wish list and kind of upvote the things that they think are most important. So you could come into one of these features and say, yeah, I think it would be a really good idea to download a checklist with all their synonyms. Then you could go, I think this is a great idea, or whatever. And the more comments that a wish list item gets, the more we consider it to be a popular item. And so the higher it will be prioritized if we have the time to develop unfunded things. So there are some things that get developed just because we have a little bit of extra developer time from our funded developments and that we can kind of get into the pipeline, especially if they're relatively straightforward things. And so to kind of put your things at the top of the list, I definitely recommend going into GitHub and taking a look at those. It can be kind of overwhelming. We have 278 because you all have a lot of good ideas. But you can always do a little search like, has anyone ever mentioned this particular thing? Oh, look, there's all these tickets that already talk about checklists. So maybe there's one that's talking about the particular one that I'm interested in. And if you don't see any, then you can just create a new issue and you just put a description here. And if it is a duplicate, like we already know that someone has asked for that, no sweat. We pretty much know what's in the wish list, so we can go in and look for the duplicate and close it as duplicate if necessary. But if that happens, then you still get logged as like, hey, more than one person has asked for this, so it's a more popular item. So that's just a reminder of Symbiota discussions and the community board and the wish list. Another announcement is that the Symbiota Support Hub will be in effect closed for the holidays, December 25th through January 4th. So if you send us any help desk emails during that time, it's possible we'll see them because we might be jumping in just to make sure the portals aren't down if there's any emergencies, but you will probably not hear from us in any expedient manner. So talk to us in the new year. Okay, so let's get into what we're going to be talking about next year. We call this our 2026 sneak peek, and it's going to go over upcoming events and Symbiota Support Hub related activities. And then we're also going to talk about upcoming Symbiota features. So Symbiota 3.4 is going to include quite a few really exciting features. So much so that we thought it would be a good idea to start talking about them now, instead of having to like do one um, meeting for every single tool. That way you guys get a heads up and you can start looking for the documentation immediately when the code comes out. Okay, so let's talk about upcoming events and Symbiota Support Hub activities. We're really excited for 2026. There's going to be some great activities happening that year. And oops, I put the wrong date on here. This is actually December 2025. So right now we have, first of all, we're going to roll out a donation campaign for Symbiota users. And that is partially because our iDigBio funding is running out at the end of 2026. And the further ahead we can get of this curve and keep the Symbiota portals moving, then the better shape we'll be in once that funding runs out. So I'm going to pass it over to Jen to give kind of an overview of that process.
Yeah. Our plan is tomorrow to send out an email because it's Giving Tuesday. And so this is the first time that we have been organized in such a way that we are asking for donations. And so if any of you are able to give, we'd appreciate it. And also if you have curators or collectors or people who are using your data all the time or using the portal all the time, your natural heritage programs, like just, anybody in the biodiversity space who values these portals and the data they contain, please forward the email on to them. And $20 helps. And so we'll just see what happens. But that is sort of our first attempt to see what kind of support there is outside of federal funding. So everybody on this call is familiar with the boom and bust cycle of federal awards and the digitization grants, and then everybody has funding for 4 years and then they don't. And basically I'll speak just for myself. So I believe in Symbiota. I think it's very important for my collection. And we have organized a team of people at the University of Kansas, Katie and Lindsay and Greg, who support all of the portals. There's over 50 portals that are hosted by Kansas, and then they help do backend tasks and data management and all of the kind of server backup stuff. And those positions support all of those collections. It's about 2,000 collections now that are sharing their data in those portals. And so how do we sustain that? It's like a community good. And we have always had a philosophy of making sure that the barriers of entry into Symbiota are low. So small or underfunded collections, we want them to have a place to come. And we don't want to charge people And but yet there's actual expenses incurred from the work that we're doing. And so how do we sustain it? And that's something that we've already spent last year grappling with, and we are continuing to grapple with that this year as the NSF funds run out this year. And so our first attempt is this donation campaign that you'll get an email about it tomorrow. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about that right now.
What percentage are you supported by the IDIG Bio funds?
So we have 3.5 people that are fully supported on IDIG Bio funds. So that's Katie, Lindsay, and Greg, and a little bit of Ed Gilbert's time for programming. And then our team at this point includes 3 other software developers, and the software developers are funded on subawards on other people's grants. So somebody will say, we want to develop this tool for Symbiota. So they'll either put Kansas in as a subaward, or we have the ability to invoice collections to say, like, here's portal support or image hosting or portal management, and we can issue an invoice to your institution. And so those software developers are supported on that money. And then there's like some mysterious costs, like keeping all the servers on and just that sort of stuff that right now the University of Kansas and the Biodiversity Institute at the University of Kansas is sort of absorbing, since nobody actually pays for that, even though there is a cost associated with it. Anything else?
I'll add that we'll probably have time for questions at the end too, if people think of them as we keep going.
Everyone needs to buy lottery tickets. Great. Thanks, Katie.
No problem. Yeah, that would be the dream. Anyone know any billionaires? Let's just ask them. All right, and then following that and in line with the same kind of idea is we have it listed here as January 2026, but it's really going to be the majority of 2026 where we engage the whole community in this discussion about sustainability. So that's probably going to involve some Symbiota support group meetings, potentially some other webinars where we're discussing the options for sustainability for our portals. One thing that we've talked about in previous webinars is the image hosting. So we're going to have some more information about what folks' image hosting sizes and therefore expected bills at the end of 2026 would look like. So we're hoping to get that information out to you guys much sooner than a bill would be due, so that you can decide what your options will be. The long and short of that is image hosting is actually an additional cost that we do pay for. And then there's the personnel cost of having to work with those images and manage them. So that is for sure going to be something that we discuss with collections that have a lot of images about hosting on SSH servers for a fee. And we'll have more information about that in early 2026. So don't panic. We're not deleting any images. Just stay tuned for that discussion in the future. Lindsay or Jen, you have any comments to add to this? Okie doke. And then in February 2026, big news, I'm going on maternity leave in February, so I will be not on the help desk and not at Symbiota Support Group, most likely. My due date is February 1st, so that would be a little soon to be on Zoom. So just expect that, that's 1/3 of the Symbiota Support Hub team. So things might be a little bit slower. As you already know, Lindsay and Greg are on it, but that's just little bit less capacity for our team. And for sure, don't email me. Always email the help desk, because it will not get to me for a whole month. Another exciting event in 2026 is that we are launching a consortium of Northeastern Herbaria portal campaigns. So if you manage your data or if you push a copy of your data to the CNH, then look for a bunch of emails from us in February and March because we are going to be launching that campaign and helping you with some data cleaning, data publishing, just getting your data in really good tip-top shape. And that will be in association, of course, with Patrick Sweeney, who is the manager of that portal. In
Just
May
real,
20, oh,
just
sorry,
real
go ahead,
quick.
Brad.
Sorry, Katie. Are they not in the SINET? It seems like there's like partial overlap
They
between
are
SINET
not.
and
Yeah.
Northeast.
The Consortium of Northeastern Bavaria is a totally separate database. There are some collections that can be found in both SciNet
Mm.
and in CNH, but for the most part, yeah, they're separate.
Are there plans to like get them in the same, everybody in the same pot, or
Yes and no. I think what's limiting us now is SciNet is already a huge database, and if you add 5 million more records, that's going to decrease the performance of the portal significantly. And so the hope is that both improvements in the code, the server infrastructure, and developments in the API will make it not necessary for us to have a ginormous database. In fact, we could have smaller databases that all talk to each other, and thus you don't need a giant database. But that's kind of like the future vision. Good question.
And that future vision is something that we are actively writing new proposals for so that we could fund the development of it. We call it the super database, the super DB. And so we talk about the merits and the pros and cons associated with what if you had all the records in one place and then your portals, you know, pull from that. Everybody is pulling from the same place, but with their geographic filter or their whatever. And what do you lose? What do the portal communities lose if that's the case? Like, what do you gain? And so we do philosophically talk about that all the time. And it's a hard computer problem to solve.
And social problem, of course, because there's these communities that you don't want to break up or dilute, you know? That's also something we will talk about in our portal manager workshop. So we've invited a bunch of portal managers, people who have been in leadership in Symbiota portals across the years, to really have a brainstorming and sustainability and what's working, what's not working discussion with. That's going to be in San Luis Obispo in May. So if you have items that you're like, hey, I really wish the community would discuss X and such, reach out to the portal manager of your portal. And if there isn't one, clearly you can always reach out to us. But just so you know that that's happening, that we're trying to get the Symbiota communities talking to each other and figure out what are some um, avenues that we can take for sustainability and also just for improving the whole experience of using Symbiota. Lindsay and Jen, do you have any additions for that?
No, it's just an interesting organizational structure because you guys are in your portal because you have some affinity or identity with the groups of curators in your area, usually, or it's a taxonomic focus. And then usually for that portal and that community to thrive, somebody has to take a leadership role. And some portals are active and pumped up and doing all kinds of stuff. And others aren't, where it's just a couple collections managing live. And so we really want to cultivate the local capacity so that the portal really feels like your portal, and you have agency to to make it what you want. At the same time, there's clearly an economic argument for consolidation, where having all the portals in one place, the code base managed in one GitHub repository, so new developments can get delivered out to all the portals together. Like, obviously, that is great. The whole idea behind the Symbiota Support Hub was really like, we can't all afford our own IT person. So if we have one IT person centrally, they can be the IT person for everybody. And that's same for outreach and education, which is what Lindsay takes care of, and data management, which is what Katie takes care of. And so so at the same time, those three positions at the Symbiota Support Hub are not ever intended to replace portal leadership. And so so we really want to do what we can to make sure that the communities and the collections themselves are thriving and well supported, and also that our team is sustained to help you do the good work.
Thanks, Jen. Great points. All right, and then we just heard last week that a colloquium that we proposed to the Botany 2026 meeting has been approved. This is, it's called Updates from U.S. Herbarium Consortia. And the idea is that we're going to have herbarium consortia discuss their groups. So the Consortium of Northeastern Herbaria, CERNEC. If you're part of a consortium and you'd like to talk about anything during this session, that would be great. Often at Botany, there are updates from like individual herbaria, but we think it's really important that the community knows that there are these consortia within the US and across the US that are working together to do more things, to have more synergy together. So excited to highlight all of y'all's work at Botany next year in Tucson, Arizona in August. Don't worry, we've been to Tucson in the summer before, and it's actually quite lovely. There's a lazy river and everything. All right, let's shift to talking about upcoming Symbiota features. So the next release of Symbiota is going to be Symbiota 3.4. At least the next major point release is what we call it. And there are some exciting new features coming out in this release. The timeline of this release is that we're doing our internal testing right now. We are going to probably roll it out to a beta testing community in mid-December, just a couple weeks. See what bugs come up from there so that we don't roll those out to the huge community and then have to emergency fix a bunch of bugs. And then the finalized version is going to come out early in 2026, depending on how many bugs we find. So that's the plan. And just keep your eyes peeled for emails from us, where we'll have links to all the documentation to the new features, which is not quite out yet because we might need to make some adjustments there. Okay, so I wanted to briefly talk about how development works at the Symbiota Support Hub, just kind of to get your to let you guys know, transparently what is going on behind the scenes. So first of all, why do we develop what we develop? So there might be some tools in here that you're like, well, that's not super helpful for me. Why was it prioritized? And I'll talk about that. So development prioritization at the Symbiota Support Hub generally has there's a few main reasons why we develop things. The first one is, as Jen explained before, our developers are primarily on external contracts. So our development time is not necessarily up to us. It depends on what we are funded to develop. So that means that it depends on grants and awards. It depends on agreements and contracts. And it depends on, we have a fee for service as well. If someone wants like a small feature developed or a big feature and has a lot of money to put toward it. So a lot of the things that you'll see will acknowledge the funder of that feature because they're the ones who paid the time for the developers to make those features. So that's, of course, one of our prioritization keys. The second that we've been working on, particularly recently with the security incidents that happened, is patching up security and what is called technical debt. So in the field, this means things that we haven't had the time to fix or improve because everyone's busy giving us money to make new features instead of fix the old ones or prevent new problems from arising due to security vulnerabilities, etc. So when we have spare time, we'll call it laughingly, we will prioritize securing vulnerabilities and fixing systemic issues or long-standing problems. So if the latest and greatest thing that people are asking for doesn't get developed, often it's because we've been having to do a lot of quote unquote boring stuff that keeps the Symbiota portals running smoothly, not giving you spurious data downloads, things like that. And some of you guys have run into this when you run into bugs that have come up because a new feature was developed and then there's some dependency, blah, blah, blah. Those are the types of things that we are constantly fixing, and we have to prioritize to make sure that your guys' experience is as you expect it to be, and that your data stays safe and secure. But then we love it when we have a little bit more time because then we can prioritize things that are in high demand or that are really popular. So when we have a little bit of spare development budget, we will go to the items on the community board and look for things that are of broad benefit and wide use and wide demand. So we look for things that many people have requested and that we think are not going to be a huge, huge lift, and that people across the portals are going to be able to use, not just like one or two use cases. So that's what we endeavor to do. Sometimes it's not perfect, but that's kind of our goal. All right, so then what is the process for things getting developed? Briefly, first of all, we identify or outline the problem. You guys help with that in posting things to the community board, and then, providing the funding to get some of these developments done. We have the development team work on those tools, but then there's so many more steps after the actual tool is developed. So first we have to test the specific feature. So test that thing in isolation on what's called its feature branch. So just a version of a code that has that new feature on it. But even once you have been like, this works perfectly, no problem, integrated into the main code, the main code itself, because of all those dependencies, sometimes doesn't actually end up functioning the same way you would expect it to, once that feature's been merged into it. So then we have to do what we call version testing, where you're testing all the changes that have happened in concert in one time and place. And then once we're confident that those work, we do what's called a version release. So there are these minor releases that we call hot fixes, and that's when we fix bugs. And those come out probably every few weeks to a month. And so if we have ever emailed you and been like, okay, a fix is in the works, but it's not yet like rolled out to your portal, that's because like a new hot fix has not been released yet. But we try to do that as speedily as possible. And then the major releases, those come out, maybe twice a year. And those are when you have big, sexy new features that have the potential to introduce a lot of bugs. So that's why they're a little bit slower to come out. Okay, so I'm going to talk about not all, just some Symbiota 3.4 features that I thought you guys would be most excited about. And Lindsay will also talk about some too. So in Symbiota 3.4, there's going to be some exciting new search capabilities. First, you'll be able to search by predefined polygons, and you'll be able to search by taxon characters. So what do those mean? A predefined polygon is just some geographic shape that has been predefined as a unit that someone would want to search. And we put it in the geographic thesaurus as a place name. So the application for this was in contract with us with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. How they want to use it is they want to be able to define seed transfer zones. So these are areas where they might be looking for wild populations that they can use as a source for their seeds in conservation and restoration work. And so they want to be able to say like, well, these are what we consider the seed transfer zones or ecoregions that I might be interested in when I'm looking for this particular stock to do my restoration. You can think of other ways you could use this. You could use national parks boundaries, BLM boundaries, um, Native American lands or indigenous lands boundaries. So whatever could be a defined geographic polygon could technically be searched in the portal. Again, just like in any geographic search, that would be limited to any records that have a coordinate. So you're not going to find everything that necessarily falls within that, but it's a nice way of being able to search something to a greater degree of granularity than state, county, etc., or text fields. And then searching by taxon characters, this will be highly dependent on the portal. So taxon characters are um, characters provided to a taxon profile in a portal that are used in the identification keys. So if you guys have ever looked at a checklist that has the identification keys enabled, there are these characters that show up on the right side that may correspond to the taxa in the checklist. And, okay, let's look for some trees, and it will narrow it down to my trees in this list. If you have sufficient data associated with the taxa in your portal, such that, 50% of them have a tree or no tree designation, then I don't remember what the exact percentage is in checklists, but then this will show up as a character that you can use in your key. So that is going to be something that is available from search collections. There will be a new accordion level in here if it's turned on in your portal. That's called characters or taxon characters. And then you'd be able to, from that search, be like, I want to look for only tree species. Big caveat to both of these is that these features will only be turned on with the coordination, in coordination with and at the request of the portal community because they're so dependent on how good the data in the database are. As you can imagine, if you're in a portal that is growing really quickly and a lot of taxa are being added quickly, they might not have gotten the important characteristics like tree or shrub or, you know, anything else you might think of as a character. And so if a public user goes in and looks for the trees, and then there are 78 taxa that are trees but have not been coded as trees, they might get really confused and say, I did this search and not all the trees showed up. So again, this is going to be highly dependent on the completeness of the data available in your portal. Chilla asks, what's the base map for the Symbiota maps? Yes, it's OpenStreetMap. It comes from the Leaflet API. Oh, and similarly, for predefined polygons, you're not going to see the ability to search by polygons if there are no polygons that are like agreed upon by the community that people will want to search. So if you're like, this is awesome, I want all the national parks in my portal, then start talking to your community members and you can start making that happen. All right, another fun feature that's coming up that I think a lot of you folks are going to like is we got some funds from the Texas and Oklahoma Regional Consortium of Herbaria, or TORCH project, to make a duplicate georeference harvesting tool. So this is the ability to harvest georeferences from duplicate specimens, so even those that belong to other collections. This is more common in plant collections than it is in non-plant collections, so I'm sorry, insect collectors, if this is not as exciting for you. But duplicate specimens are considered specimens that have the same collector name, collector number, and date. And those can be already auto-linked to one another via the duplicate matching or batch matching tools. And this tool will enable you to go in and see what of your specimens are not georeferenced yet, but have a duplicate that has been georeferenced, and go down a list and say, yeah, I want to import that georeference and that one and that one and that one and that one, or a bunch of them at once, and bring those into your data set, into your collection. So this has the potential to really speed up your georeferencing. You can limit your results to like, hey, I only trust the georeferences from these collections, or I only trust the georeferences that are smaller than this error radius, or there's all number of things that you can limit by so that you can be confident in the georeferences that you're bringing into your collection. And we will do a more comprehensive demo and kind of how-to on this in a future Symbiota support group or other webinar. But just thought you might be excited. I know that we did this for the Consortium of California Herbaria in like using R and some downloads, and also for the global TCN, again using R and some downloads. And it was able to increase our georeferencing numbers phenomenally. So we were really excited to build that into Symbiota. Another feature that's going to be available for downloading of data is that you will be able to, in a download, decide whether you want to download just all the names as they are, or just all the names as they are, plus an additional field that lists the accepted name according to the taxonomic thesaurus in the portal. So that way you wouldn't have to do any taxonomic harmonization as a step afterwards. Granted, this is going to depend on whether your taxonomic thesaurus is very good or whether it's kept up to date, but at least that gets you a place to start, putting synonyms together. So that's going to be an additional download option for you. And this is going to align with the Darwin Core Terms accepted name usage and accepted name usage authorship and accepted name usage ID. So those will be 3 fields that will be added to your data set that you're downloading if you select that option. And you don't need to select that option. You can still just download without that. It will not change the names in the scientific name field. It will just add those additional names. I'm super stoked about this next one. Soon you'll be able to download directly from the record search forms. So, if you go into your data editor control panel and you've done like this super cool search and you're like, oh yeah, this is exactly the specimens that I want. Shoot, I can't download it. Now you'll be able to download it. So there will be a little download button and the download window will show up and give you your options about what kind of download you want to do. And then you'll just be able to download it right there. So this is again through your data editor control panel. So this is the record search form. And then you'll also see on this record search form that there's a change down here. If you have traits in your portal, then you'll also be able to search for records with those specific traits or um, trait states directly in your record search form. So not just from the public search. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay, who's going to share with you some very exciting new updates on fossil collections.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. All right, well, I can take us to the finish line with our presentation for the day. So I'll be talking about how we're going to be supporting fossil collections in the future. So I think some people may be familiar with the fact that Symbiota does support paleo data and has, but in a very, for snapshots only, basically. So this was originally developed for the Pteridophyte TCN back in like 2017, 2018. And so we've been working over the last year to basically take that development to the next level so that Symbiota can be used not just for snapshot collections, but also for the discovery and active management of fossil specimen data, i.e. for live managed collections, which is very exciting. And I should note that because these features aren't necessarily relevant to every collection in Symbiota, they won't be turned on automatically. Some of them will be turned on a portal by portal basis, and others can be configured on a collection by collection basis. Importantly, I should acknowledge the fact that these features were developed through funding from the National Science Foundation's GeoOSC or Geoscience Open Science Ecosystem Program. This was a collaboration between our team, the University of Colorado at Boulder, and the Smithsonian, as well as our unfunded partners being Catalog of Life, GBIF, TADWIG, and the Paleo Data Working Group. And we've been working on this for about 2 years now. This grant is ending at the end of April. And so some of the features that have been developed to enhance the functionality of Symbiota for the data discovery of fossil specimen data include new public user features. So something we've done is we've kind of reconfigured the display of geological context data on specimen records. So this would be things like geological age and information about rock units. Something that's completely new is that we have now enabled the ability to search on terms from the Darwin Core class geological context. This also includes fields on the map search, as well as being able to export your fossil specimen data, which is exciting because in the past, you could bring snapshot data in, but once it was in the portal, it was kind of like locked in there. You couldn't really search on it, download it. So this is all totally new. And so if this is enabled in your portal, you'll see this new section on the search form called geological context. It'll include early interval, late interval. Those are fields for searching on time. So like early interval might be Jurassic, late interval would be Cretaceous, group formation member bed are all lithostratigraphic or rock unit related fields. And if a collection were to enter some of this information, some of it will show up, for example, in public record view when you're searching in list view. You'll also be able to see it in the table view. You'll be able to sort on some of these fields when you're searching for records as well as export them. Again, related to the map search, so group formation member bed as well as late and early interval will be, if enabled, visible on your map search in your portal. And then something that's been rolled out, I think already to some portals is there's a new layer that's being pulled from the MacroStrat API. This is just pulling in surficial geology to help you see where your georeference is located, if that's maybe matching up with the rock unit you put in for your specimen record. Of course, that information is only as accurate as what's being pulled from MacroStrat, and I know that the information is more accurate in the US than in other countries, but nonetheless, I think this will be a pretty useful tool for fossil collections using Symbiota moving forward. Here's a preview of what public records will look like in your portal. So you can see geological context data is visible on this record. The basis of record value is also visible. For example, if you have a snail cataloged and you haven't put in the geological context yet, you won't know if it's not a fossil, if that information is not there. So we've added that. And I also wanted to point out the fact that Symbiota's extended specimen features, I think, will be particularly useful for fossil collections. A good example is the fact that a lot of fossils occur with interesting associations. So in this example here, we have a fish that has eaten another fish. And so they're cataloged separately and they're using extended specimen to link the two records together. And so we have a number of example records I can show if you have some interesting catalog scenarios and you're like, how do I deal with this? So in addition to enhanced data discovery features, we also have now enhanced functionality for active data management. Specifically, there are new features available to anyone with editor permissions in a collection where this is enabled. So you'll be able to search all of your paleo fields and batch edit some of the fields using the data editor search form. There's also an improved interface for entering geological time related data. And so on the occurrence editor, if this is enabled for your collection, you'll be able to now use like a drop-down list to enter geological time. In the past, you would have to hand type out Phanerozoic, Cenozoic, Paleogene, Eocene, Pribonian in the right order and type everything correctly for this to really work. Now you can just pick a value and there's a new table in the background based on the International Chronostratigraphic Chart that will back populate that information for you, just to make data entry a little bit smoother and easier. Like I mentioned, the data editor search form will now include all the paleo fields, so you'll actually be able to search on that information. And then again, to the right, you can see that some of these fields will also be visible in this table. Again, if it's enabled for your collection, not everybody will have this activated. And then something I definitely need to mention is that because of all these improvements, we are going to be updating this in Symbiota docs. As Katie mentioned, there'll be a lot of new documentation for the paleo features. And then something that's already come out. So as part of this larger GeoOC project that I mentioned, because it's bigger than Symbiota, there's a new community knowledge hub for fossil collections that's been developed as part of that project. It's called the Paleo Data Knowledge Hub. It's in part maintained by the Paleo Data Working Group and their collaborators. And so there's a lot of very discipline specific documentation on there for fossil collections that's like a little more narrow in focus than what we would put on Symbiota docs. So I would read those two kind of in parallel, those resources, if you're planning on using Symbiota to manage your fossil specimen data. And then lastly, I should mention as part of this project, we now have a new Symbiota portal for fossil collections where all of these features will be enabled. We're particularly interested in recruiting collections that need a database, so live managed collections, especially research collections. We're not onboarding teaching collections at this time. But if you have a collection or know somebody who does that could benefit from this resource, please reach out to our help desk and I can help you get started with that. This is the homepage. If you go to paleo.symbiota.org, all of the documentation just mentioned is linked on the search menu. And you'll probably want to read just like some of the information on the homepage that'll give you a sense for whether or not this portal is going to be a good fit for your collection. I think with that, we've got about 7 minutes for questions and discussion. I will stop sharing so we have a few minutes to just do exactly that.
Thanks, Lindsay. Super exciting. Does anyone have any questions about any of the features we've discussed or other things, events? You can also throw them in the chat and we'll read them. Chilla asked in the chat about the API, and yes, the API is one of those things that's kind of in our like technical debt, but slightly new feature development camp of like something that we're slowly chipping away at, because most websites offering data have APIs these days, but it's a really big lift. So that's been in development, but has only been kind of piecemeal funded by some things and hasn't been like fully like, okay, we can devote tons of time and energy to working on this. So we anticipate it's probably not going to be a public API until like probably 3.5 or 3.6, depending on whether we can get some funding to like really get this finalized. Because as you can imagine, with great access to data comes great responsibilities, and so the API has to be done really carefully to make sure that you guys are still getting the credit for all your data, and we're not just like getting blasted by bots all the time.
Real quick question. Is there a place, sorry, I'm browsing through here in the GitHub. Is there a place to kind of sort of link programs that we've written specifically to process Symbiota data so that other people can use them as well? We can like share.
Sorry, for what's to process some metadata?
Well, so I've written a couple of programs to process Symbiota data quickly and easily, and so to pull stuff out. So I don't want to just hoard that. So I don't know, is there a good place to post that onto Symbiota? Or like on one of the discussion boards for other people to have access to it. They're all on GitHub. So as long as you have R, you can just use it. I can't find a subject line. I don't know where's the best place to post it, is my point.
Yeah, I think, and Lindsay, pop in if you have any other ideas, but probably GitHub discussions is the best place to put that. Like you could label it as an announcement or something. Um, yeah, any other thoughts, Jen or Lindsay?
Yeah, I think we should put it on Symbiota Docs. And it's actually a great idea. I can't believe we haven't come up with this sooner because there's all these downstream extensions where people have invented scripts that do cool stuff from portals. So we should just make a new page on Symbiota Docs that's like awesome stuff that other people have made. And then it just links to their GitHub and we can have a description that says like, here's basically what this does. That
Totally.
it's kind of like like curriculum. I'm thinking about cubes, blue cubes, and anyway, Symbiota Docs. Let's put it there.
Sounds great.
That's good.
Anything else? All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, you all, and nice to see you. See you in the new year. Our next Symbiota support group meeting will be bright and early January 5th. So I hope you guys are rested by then.
Right on.
Katie,
Thanks, everybody. Go
can
ahead.
I just ask you a completely irrelevant question after
For
everybody's
sure.